The dense canopy of Aurelis stretched as far as the eye could see, a tapestry of emerald and jade that breathed with life. Below its protective embrace, a complex ecosystem thrived in precarious balance. Among the countless creatures that called this wild planet home, none commanded more respect and fear than the mighty, ferocious apex predators, whose intelligence and strength had earned them dominion over this untamed world. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blackwood never imagined he would find himself stranded in this verdant hell. As the emergency escape pod's parachute snagged on the massive trees, the violent jolt sent him tumbling through the opening hatch before the vessel had completed its descent. His body crashed through layers of foliage, the branches alternately breaking his fall and lashing his skin before he finally hit the forest floor with a bone-jarring thud. For several minutes, he lay motionless, cataloging his injuries through the haze of pain. Nothing appeared broken, though his ribs protested sharply with each breath. Blood trickled from numerous cuts, their copper scent hanging in the humid air. In the distance, the sound of his escape pod completing its landing echoed through the forest, his only lifeline to technology and communication now tangled in the upper canopy. "Spectacular entrance, Blackwood," he muttered, forcing himself to sit upright. His uniform was torn in multiple places, the Federation insignia on his shoulder hanging by a few threads. The standard-issue survival pack, thank the stars, remained securely strapped to his back, though his sidearm had been lost somewhere during the fall. Through the dense foliage, invisible eyes watched his every move. Nary, young leader among the Aurelian people, crouched on a high branch, her skin's natural camouflage blending seamlessly with the surrounding bark. Her people had witnessed the strange metal bird tear through the sky before depositing this alien creature into their sacred forest. The elders had sent her to observe, not engage, to determine whether this off-worlder posed a threat to their home. Neri's slender fingers tightened around her spear as the human below struggled to his feet. Her people had encountered off-worlders before, and those encounters had rarely ended well. Traders, explorers, and worst of all poachers, all had come to Aurelis, seeking to exploit its riches with little regard for those who called it home. She narrowed her golden eyes, their vertical pupils dilating as she studied his movements. This one appeared injured, vulnerable. Yet something about his methodical actions spoke of training and resilience. Ryan took inventory of his surroundings, orienting himself by the fading light that filtered through the canopy. Night would fall soon, and he needed shelter. The escape pod manual had included brief mentions of Aurelis, a planet rich in biodiversity, but sparsely populated by a humanoid species known to avoid contact with Federation representatives. The briefing had also warned about the planet's apex predators, massive feline-like creatures with exceptional intelligence that the locals revered as near deities. First things first, he muttered, unslinging his pack to retrieve basic medical supplies. The standard-issue regenerator would handle the worst of his cuts, but he'd need to conserve its power. As he treated his wounds, he continued scanning the environment, the feeling of being watched prickling at the back of his neck. Neri silently marveled at the strange healing magic the alien employed, a blue light that sealed his wounds without fire or herbs. Such technology both fascinated and repulsed her. The elders taught that such devices corrupted the natural balance, making their wielders soft and dependent. Yet, she couldn't deny a flicker of curiosity. As daylight waned, Ryan established a small camp beneath the shelter of a massive root system. He didn't dare light a fire yet, not until he better understood the predators that might be drawn to it. Instead, he activated a small thermal unit from his survival pack, providing warmth without light or smoke. The ration bars he consumed tasted like cardboard, but they would sustain him until he could assess local food sources. His training had prepared him for survival scenarios, but the reality of being completely cut off from the Federation settled heavily on his shoulders. The emergency beacon in his pack would transmit his location, but in this remote sector, it could be weeks or even months before rescue arrived. For now, survival was his only mission. From her perch, Neri watched as darkness enveloped the forest and the strange alien curled beneath his shelter. His behavior puzzled her. He'd made no attempt to hunt to explore beyond his immediate surroundings, or to seek contact with others. Perhaps he knew he was being watched, or perhaps he simply understood his precarious position in a world not his own. Either way, his caution earned a grudging respect. She would continue her vigil through the night, waiting to see what the morning would reveal about this uninvited visitor. Dawn broke with a cacophony of sounds as Aurelis awoke to a new day. Ryan emerged from his makeshift shelter stiff, but rested to find the forest transformed by morning light. Vibrant flowers that had been closed the previous evening now bloomed in explosive color, and creatures he couldn't begin to classify flitted among the branches overhead. He needed to recover his escape pod, or at least salvage its communications array and emergency supplies. Looking up at the tangled canopy, he calculated the climb would be challenging, but necessary. First, though, he needed to establish a more permanent base camp and secure a water source. A nearby stream provided the latter, its crystal clarity, suggesting it was safe for consumption. Nevertheless, Ryan used his portable purifier before drinking deeply and refilling his canteen. As he crouched by the water's edge, a subtle rustling from the undergrowth caught his attention. Ryan froze, years of training taking over as he slowly shifted his gaze toward the sound without moving his head. Through a gap in the vibrant foliage, a pair of luminous eyes stared back at him. Not the humanoid observer he had sensed the night before, but something altogether more primal. The creature that emerged was smaller than he expected, barely the size of a Terran lynx, but unmistakably a juvenile version of the apex predators described in the briefing. Its coat shimmered with an iridescent quality, shifting between deep azure and emerald as it moved, and 6 powerful limbs carried it forward with feline grace. Most striking were its eyes. Intelligence burned within them, assessing Ryan with unmistakable curiosity rather than hunger. Every instinct told Ryan to back away slowly, to create distance between himself and the predator. Instead, he remained perfectly still, maintaining eye contact without aggression. The young ferocious tilted its head, a chirping sound emerging from its throat. "Hello there," Ryan said softly, keeping his voice calm and even. "I don't suppose you're the welcoming committee." The creature's ears, 4 of them arranged in pairs, twitched at the sound of his voice. It took another cautious step forward, then another, moving with the awkward confidence of youth. Ryan slowly reached into his pocket, withdrawing a portion of his morning ration bar. "Hungry. Probably not for this cardboard, but it's all I've got to offer." He placed the food on the ground between them, then backed away one careful step. From her concealment, Neri watched with mounting alarm. The human was either incredibly brave or profoundly foolish. The young ferocious belonged to one of the most powerful matriarchs in the region, a mother who had lost cubs to poachers before, and who guarded her remaining offspring with lethal dedication. If she found this alien near her cub— The juvenile ferocious sniffed at the offering, its whiskers twitching, before it delicately consumed the ration bar. It made a sound of disgust that was almost comical, shaking its head, before looking back at Ryan, with what could only be described as accusation. Ryan laughed softly. "Yeah, I know. Not exactly gourmet, is it? Sorry about that." The interaction froze Neri in place. Her breath caught in her throat. Since time immemorial, her people had approached the ferocious with reverence and distance, offering sacrifices and respecting their territory. Never would an Aurelian speak so casually to one of the sacred predators, much less laugh in its presence. Yet this alien showed neither fear nor the desire to harm, only a strange, gentle consideration that defied her expectations. The young ferocious chirped again, circling Ryan with increasing boldness. He remained still, speaking in that same soft, even tone that seemed to calm the predator. Then, a distant roar shattered the peaceful moment, a sound that sent ice through Neri's veins. The mother had noticed her cub's absence. The juvenile's ears flattened against its skull, its body tensing as it recognized its parents' call. With one last curious look at Ryan, it bounded back into the undergrowth, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Ryan released a breath. He hadn't realized he was holding his heart pounding in his chest. The encounter had been fascinating, but dangerous. He'd need to be more careful about unexpected company in the future. Gathering his supplies, he returned to his camp, unaware that he had just shattered Neri's most fundamental beliefs about off-worlders. Over the next several days, Ryan established a more permanent encampment, fashioning rudimentary tools from the materials at hand, and making multiple attempts to reach his tangled escape pod. Each attempt brought him closer, but the dense canopy presented challenges he hadn't anticipated. In the meantime, he documented his surroundings meticulously, cataloging plants and wildlife with scientific precision. If nothing else, his enforced stay on Aurelis would yield valuable research data. The young ferocious returned several times, always alone, always cautious but increasingly comfortable in Ryan's presence. He began to recognize it by a distinctive pattern of spots along its flank, and it seemed to recognize him as well, chirping and greeting whenever it approached his camp. "You need a name," Ryan told it, on the 5th day, as it sprawled lazily near his shelter, while he fashioned a more efficient climbing harness from vines and components from his survival pack. "How about Nova? You remind me of the stars." The creature Nova purred in what Ryan chose to interpret as approval, rolling onto its back in a display of trust that humbled him. He was careful not to abuse that trust, maintaining a respectful distance and never attempting to touch the young predator. Their strange friendship developed through proximity and mutual curiosity rather than physical contact. Neri continued her observation, her initial wariness gradually giving way to fascination. Unlike previous off-worlders, this human made no attempt to hunt the forest's creatures or harvest its rare plants. Instead, he studied them, recording their behaviors in a small device he carried. More remarkably, he had somehow earned the trust of a ferocious cub, a feat no Aurelian had ever accomplished. On the 7th day, Ryan finally succeeded in reaching his escape pod. The vessel was more damaged than he'd hoped, its communication array crushed beyond repair. The emergency beacon continued to function, but the odds of it reaching Federation space were slim. He salvaged what supplies he could, including additional ration packs, medical equipment, and a rudimentary energy weapon, the latter, more for protection than hunting. As he descended with his recovered supplies, a distant sound reached his ears, mechanized transport approaching from the north. His heart leapt with hope of rescue, then immediately sank as he recognized the acoustic signature. Not Federation vessels, but the distinctive rumble of illegal mining equipment, often used by interplanetary poachers. Ryan hastened his descent, mind racing. Aurelis was designated as a protected world under Federation law. Its unique ecosystem and indigenous population granted non-interference status. Poachers operating here were breaking multiple galactic treaties, and if his suspicions were correct, they were likely after the planet's most valuable resource, the ferocious themselves, whose unique biology had made them targets for unethical collectors and black market researchers. As he reached the forest floor, a blood-curdling screech tore through the canopy, the unmistakable sound of a ferocious in pain. Without hesitation, Ryan sprinted toward the sound, the energy weapon clutched in his hand. Training and caution told him to stay hidden, to observe before engaging, but something deeper drove him forward, the thought of Nova or its mother caught in the poacher's traps. Neri had heard the sound as well, and for once her path and the humans aligned. She raced through the trees, moving with the silent efficiency born from a lifetime in the forest. The human below crashed through the undergrowth with far less subtlety, but his determination matched her own. They arrived at the scene simultaneously, Ryan bursting through a thicket, Neri dropping from the canopy to find a massive adult, ferocious, ensnared in an energy net, its powerful limbs thrashing against the containing field. 3 figures in environmental suits circled the trapped predator weapons, trained on it, as they prepared some kind of tranquilizing device. Ryan assessed the situation in an instant. The poacher's attention was focused on their captive, giving him a momentary advantage. He raised his weapon, calculating the best approach, when movement at the edge of his vision caught his attention. Another humanoid figure, clearly not one of the poachers, poised to attack from above. For the first time, Ryan laid eyes on his mysterious observer, a slender female with skin that shifted colors like living camouflage, golden eyes with vertical pupils, and a lithe form adapted perfectly to the forest environment. An Aurelian, unmistakably, and one prepared to fight despite being outnumbered. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, unspoken communication passing between them. Then, with synchronized precision that belied their lack of planning, they attacked. Ryan fired his energy weapon at the control node of the containment net, disrupting its field, just as Neri launched herself at the nearest poacher. The massive, ferocious, suddenly freed roared with fury and lunged toward another of the intruders. The third poacher spun toward Ryan, raising a weapon far more lethal than his own salvage device. Time seemed to slow as Ryan dove for cover, the poacher's energy blast scorching the trunk where he had stood a moment before. From his position behind a massive root, he returned fire, forcing the poacher to retreat toward their transport vehicle. The sounds of combat surrounded him, the ferocious roars, the poacher's shouts, and the peculiar battle cries of the Aurelian warrior. When Ryan dared to look again, one poacher lay motionless on the ground, another was fleeing toward the transport, and the third struggled in the grasp of the ferocious's powerful jaws. The massive predator shook its captive once violently, then released the limp form to the forest floor. Then, to Ryan's astonishment, the ferocious turned toward him. In that moment he recognized the distinctive markings on its flank that matched those of his small friend Nova. This was the mother, the matriarch whose cub he had befriended. The massive predator approached him slowly, its 6 limbs moving with deliberate grace, despite the injuries it had sustained from the energy net. Ryan remained perfectly still, knowing that running would only trigger its predatory instincts. Death seemed certain as the enormous creature lowered its head to his level, its breath hot against his face. Then, impossibly, it pressed its forehead against his chest, a gesture he couldn't interpret, but instinctively understood was not aggression. After a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the ferocious withdrew, gave a final rumbling sound that vibrated through Ryan's bones and disappeared into the forest. Only then did Ryan become aware of the Aurelian warrior, standing nearby, her golden eyes wide with disbelief. She approached cautiously, her spear lowered, but not discarded. "You have been blessed by the Mother of Shadows," she said, her voice melodic, despite the harsh consonants of Federation standard. "No outsider has ever received such recognition." Ryan blinked in surprise, both at her ability to speak his language and at the significance of what had just occurred. I've met her cub several times. I called it Nova." The Aurelian's expression shifted through several emotions, too quick to track. "The young one sought you out willingly." "Yes, we've been getting acquainted." Ryan gestured toward the fallen poachers. "These people, they're not with me. They're criminals, poachers." "I know what they are," she replied, her tone hardening. "They have come before stealing our sacred guardians for their laboratories and collections. More will follow when these do not return." Ryan nodded grimly. "Probably, but we've bought some time." He extended his hand in the universal gesture of peaceful greeting. "Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blackwood, Federation Survey Corps." She regarded his hand with confusion, before tentatively extending her own. "I am Neri Hunt, leader of the Western Canopy Clan." As their hands met, her skin briefly shifted to match the tone of his, a startling display of her chameleonic abilities. "You've been watching me," Ryan stated, rather than asked. "Since I arrived." "Yes." Neri made no attempt to deny it. "Our elders demanded caution, Outsiders rarely bring anything but destruction. And now, Neri's gaze turned toward where the Mother of Shadows had disappeared. Now, I am uncertain. You have acted with honor toward the ferocious. You fought alongside me against a common enemy. She paused, seeming to reach a decision. The poacher's transport will bring others searching. You cannot remain alone. Are you offering me sanctuary? Ryan asked, surprised. I am offering you survival, Neri corrected, though something in her tone suggested the distinction was meaningful only to her. And perhaps understanding. My people should know that not all outsiders are the same. It was a tentative alliance at best, born of necessity and fragile trust. But as Ryan gathered what useful equipment he could salvage from the poacher's gear, he felt the first stirrings of hope since his crash landing. Not just for his own survival, but for something more profound, a genuine connection across the vast differences that separated his world from hers. As Neri led him deeper into the forest than he had yet ventured, Ryan activated his personal recorder, speaking softly into it. Day 7 on Aurelis. First contact established with indigenous population. Preliminary alliance formed against unauthorized poaching operation. Subject Neri appears cautiously receptive to cultural exchange. The xenozoological specimens designated ferocious display, far greater intelligence and social complexity than previously documented. Further study essential. He paused, then added more quietly, Personal note, I may have made my first alien friend. Possibly two if you count Nova the ferocious cub. Survival prospects improving. Ahead of him, Neri glanced back, her golden eyes unreadable, but somehow less hostile than before. The forest seemed to shift around them, opening paths that Ryan's eyes could barely discern as they made their way toward what Neri called the Heart Trees, the living center of her clan's territory. The journey to the Aurelian settlement took hours, winding through increasingly dense forest that would have been impenetrable without Neri's guidance. As they traveled, Ryan observed her moving with fluid grace through terrain that challenged even his trained physicality. Occasionally, she would pause to listen to sounds imperceptible to his ears, or to touch certain plants that responded to her presence, glowing softly at her touch. Your people live in complete harmony with this ecosystem, Ryan noted during one such pause. The Federation's xenobotanists would be fascinated by the symbiotic relationships you've established. Neri regarded him with a mixture of pride and wariness. We do not establish these connections outsider. We are born to them as our ancestors were for thousands of cycles. The forest knows us as its children. She touched another luminous plant which pulsed in response. These are not separate organisms to be studied and classified. They are extensions of one living system of which we are merely a part. The concept challenged Ryan's scientific training, yet he couldn't deny the evidence before his eyes. Neri didn't simply navigate the forest. She communicated with it in subtle ways his instruments could never quantify. As twilight approached, the canopy above them opened to reveal a breathtaking sight. Massive trees, larger than any Ryan had yet encountered, formed a natural cathedral. Their trunks, easily 100 meters in diameter, rose impossibly high, their branches intertwining to create a sheltered ecosystem above. Within and between these giants, an entire community existed, dwellings, crafted so harmoniously with the living wood that they seemed to have grown rather than been built. Soft bioluminescence illuminated walkways that spiraled around the trunks, and platforms of varying sizes hosted different activities. Ryan could see figures moving about, some climbing with the same agility Neri displayed, others gathering on what appeared to be communal spaces. The Heart Trees, Neri announced, a note of reverence in her voice. Home of the Western Canopy clan for 16 generations. Ryan stood transfixed, his recorder capturing images that would astound his Federation colleagues. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it. Few outsiders have, Neri replied. Then, with a hint of what might have been humor, she added, fewer still while conscious. Before Ryan could respond to that concerning implication, movement erupted throughout the settlement. Aurelians emerged from various levels, their skin shifting colors in what Ryan interpreted as expressions of alarm. Within moments, a group of warriors descended, surrounding them with spears, similar to Neri's, but decorated with different markings. An older Aurelian, his skin displaying more muted patterns than the others, approached with deliberate steps. Neri, daughter of Lyri, he spoke in their native tongue, which Ryan's universal translator rendered in stilted Federation standard. "You bring an outsider to our heart without council approval. Explain yourself." Neri straightened her posture, conveying respect without submission. "Elder Thorin, I bring information of grave concern and an unexpected ally. The Sky Thieves have returned with new technology. They captured the Mother of Shadows herself." Murmurs spread through the gathered Aurelians, their skin rippling with colors that Ryan suspected communicated emotional states his translator couldn't interpret. "And this outsider," Elder Thoran gestured toward Ryan with obvious suspicion. "He fought alongside me to free her," Neri stated firmly. The mother acknowledged him with the blessing touch. "He has earned the right to speak before the council." This announcement caused even greater commotion. Elder Thorin's skin darkened to a deep indigo, a reaction Ryan couldn't interpret, but suspected indicated surprise or disbelief. "Is this true, outsider?" he demanded. "Did the Mother of Shadows grant you the blessing touch?" Ryan looked to Neri, who nodded slightly, encouragement in her golden eyes. "If you mean did she press her forehead against me after we freed her from the poachers, then yes. I've also befriended one of her cubs over the past week. I call it him or her Nova." His words seemed to shock the assembled Aurelians into silence. Elder Thoran studied him with penetrating intensity before finally speaking. "The council must hear this. Neri, bring your ally to the speaking ring when the third moon rises. Until then, he remains in your custody." As the elder departed and the warriors dispersed with visible reluctance, Ryan released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That went better than expected. I thought they might just skewer me on principle." "They still might," Neri replied, though the slight upward curve of her lips suggested she wasn't entirely serious. "The touch of the Mother has granted you temporary sanctuary, nothing more. The council will decide your fate." "Comforting," Ryan muttered. "So what happens now?" Neri gestured toward one of the smaller platforms, midway up the nearest heart tree. "Now you rest, eat, prepare to address the council, and perhaps—" She hesitated, studying him with newfound curiosity. "Perhaps you can tell me of your world as I have shown you mine." The simple request, so human in its expression of mutual curiosity, caught Ryan by surprise. For the first time since their meeting, he saw Neri not as an alien subject or reluctant guide, but as a person with her own desires to understand the universe beyond her forest home. "I'd like that," he replied quietly. "I'd like that very much." The dwelling Neri led him to was a seamless extension of the living tree, its interior walls glowing with the same soft bioluminescence that illuminated the exterior walkways. Furnishings were minimal, but functional. A sleeping platform covered with finely woven materials, storage areas crafted from naturally occurring hollows in the wood, and an open space near the entrance that appeared to serve as a communal area. "These are my quarters," Neri explained, setting her spear against the wall. "You will remain here until the council meeting. It is safer this way." Ryan nodded, understanding the implication. Not all Aurelians would be as accepting of his presence as Neri had become. "Thank you for your hospitality. I don't want to impose—" "It is not imposition," she interrupted. "It is duty. And—" She paused, her skin shifting through subtle variations of blue and green that he was beginning to associate with thoughtfulness. "And curiosity. Your kind has visited our world before, but always as takers, never as whatever you are." "I'm a survey officer," Ryan explained, setting down his pack. "My mission is to observe, document, and understand not to exploit or alter. Neri's head tilted in a gesture he found oddly endearing. Yet your kind builds machines that tear the sky weapons that cage our sacred guardians. How do you reconcile these things? It was a fair question, and one that cut to the heart of the Federation's ongoing ethical debates. Ryan chose his words carefully. My people aren't perfect, Neri. We're still learning, still trying to find the right balance between advancement and respect. Those who came here to hunt your guardians, they violate our laws as well as your trust. They don't represent what we aspire to be. And what do you aspire to be? She asked, the directness of her gaze, making it clear this was no idle inquiry. Ryan sat on the floor, conscious of maintaining a respectful distance. Explorers, learners, connectors of worlds. At our best, we seek to understand the universe in all its diversity, without diminishing that diversity. He smiled slightly. At least that's the ideal. Reality is messier. As it is for all peoples, Neri acknowledged, settling across from him. She produced a container of what appeared to be dried fruits and offered it to him. These are safe for your kind. Previous outsiders consumed them without illness. Ryan accepted the offering gratefully. His ration supplies were limited, and the opportunity to sample local food under guidance was valuable both scientifically and diplomatically. The fruit had a complex flavor, initially tart before blooming into unexpected sweetness. It's delicious, he said sincerely. Thank you. They shared the simple meal as the light outside faded, replaced by the ethereal glow of bioluminescent flora. Conversation flowed more easily than Ryan had anticipated. Neri's questions about Earth and the Federation revealing both intelligence and genuine curiosity about the wider universe. In turn, he asked about Aurelian culture, careful to phrase his inquiries respectfully. Neri spoke of her people's deep connection to the forest, of seasonal ceremonies that honored the cycles of life, and of the sacred relationship between Aurelians and the ferocious, a bond of mutual protection and respect that had existed since time immemorial. Our legends say that when the first Aurelians emerged from the heart trees, they were small and vulnerable, she explained. The great hunters of the forest would have devoured them, but the First Mother, the ancestor of all ferocious, recognized in them a kindred spirit. She declared them under her protection, and in return, they became the guardians of her hunting grounds, keeping balance where they might have brought destruction. A symbiotic relationship, Ryan observed, each species protecting the other. More than that, Neri insisted. A sacred trust. When a ferocious chooses to reveal itself to an Aurelian, it is considered the highest blessing. When one allows an Aurelian near its young. She shook her head, her skin rippling with colors that suggested amazement. It is unprecedented. And for this honor to be bestowed upon an outsider upon you, it challenges everything our elders have taught about your kind. Ryan considered this understanding better, now why his interactions with Nova and its mother had so profoundly affected Neri's perception of him. I didn't know the significance. I just treated the cub with respect. Precisely, Neri said, leaning forward slightly. Where others would have seen a trophy or a threat, you saw a being worthy of dignity. The Mother of Shadows recognized this truth in you, before I could see it myself. The admission seemed to cost her something, her pride perhaps, but the genuine warmth in her eyes transcended their physical differences. In that moment, Ryan felt a connection forming, fragile but real, between their worlds. As the third moon rose, casting dappled silver light through the canopy, Neri rose fluidly to her feet. It is time. The council awaits. The speaking ring proved to be a circular platform near the crown of the largest heart tree, open to the sky above, where the 3 moons of Aurelis traced their paths across the star-flecked darkness. A semicircle of seated Aurelians, 7 elders, including Thoran, awaited their arrival. Behind them stood warriors, and what Ryan assumed were other significant members of the clan. As Neri led him to the center of the ring, Ryan felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. This wasn't just a hearing. It was a judgment on whether humanity, as represented by him alone, deserved their trust. Elder Thorin spoke first, his deep voice carrying clearly across the platform. "Outsider, you stand before the Council of Elders, heart of the Western Canopy clan. Neri, daughter of Lyri, claims you fought to protect the Mother of Shadows from the Sky Thieves. She claims you have been touched by the Great Mother and befriended her cub. These claims require scrutiny." Ryan straightened, adopting the formal posture of a Federation officer, addressing dignitaries. "Honorable Elders, I am Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blackwood of the Federation Survey Corps. I came to your world by accident when my vessel was damaged, but I recognize the sanctity of Aurelis and the sovereignty of your people. I fought alongside Neri against those who would capture or harm the creatures you call ferocious, not out of political calculation, but because it was right." His words were met with silence, the elder's expressions unreadable to his untrained eyes. Then, from the back of the assembly, movement caught his attention. The crowd parted, making way for a small but familiar form that padded confidently across the speaking ring. Nova. The ferocious cub moved directly to Ryan's side, chirping in what sounded remarkably like greeting before pressing against his leg. A collective gasp rose from the assembled Aurelians. "The young one comes unbidden to the speaking ring," one of the female elders murmured, her skin shifting to pale gold. "This has not occurred in living memory." Ryan remained still aware that this unexpected development carried enormous significance. He glanced at Neri, whose expression showed both amazement and something like vindication. "The sacred guardians see truth beyond our perceptions," she stated, addressing the council with newfound confidence. "The young one recognizes this outsider as friend, as does the mother. I have observed him for 7 cycles of the sun. He studies our world with respect, takes only what he needs to survive, and shows courage against those who would do harm. I stand as witness to his character." Elder Thorin's skin had darkened to deep indigo once more. "Your testimony is noted, Hunt Leader, but the presence of the Sky Thieves raises grave concerns. If this outsider truly crashed as he claims, others will come searching for him, and for the thieves he helped defeat. What then becomes of our sanctuary?" It was the question Ryan had been dreading, yet knew was inevitable. The implications of his presence extended far beyond his individual actions. Before he could formulate a response, another elder spoke, a female whose elaborate markings suggested great age and status. "Perhaps that is precisely why the Great Mother has blessed this connection," she said, her voice soft, yet commanding. "For too long we have hidden from the stars, believing isolation would protect us. Yet the Sky Thieves find us regardless, taking what they will because we stand divided." She turned her penetrating gaze to Ryan. "Tell us, Star Traveler, what would your Federation do if we requested protection against those who hunt our sacred guardians?" The question contained implications far beyond Ryan's authority to address, yet he understood its critical importance. He chose honesty over diplomatic evasion. The Federation already recognizes Aurelis as a protected world under the Non-Interference Directive. The poachers we encountered were breaking galactic law. If your people formally requested Federation protection, it would strengthen enforcement efforts. He paused, weighing his next words carefully. But such protection comes with increased contact. Federation representatives would establish diplomatic relations, scientific exchanges, cultural liaisons. Your isolation would end. And if we desire protection without such entanglements, another elder challenged. Ryan shook his head slowly. "That isn't how relationships work between people or between worlds. Trust must flow in both directions." His blunt response seemed to surprise the council, but the aged female elder nodded slowly. "Wisdom from an unexpected source. You speak truth, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blackwood. Isolation has not protected us. Perhaps connection carefully nurtured offers a better path." Elder Thorin's expression suggested he disagreed, but he did not interrupt as she continued. "We will deliberate on these matters. Until a decision is reached, you will remain under Neri's protection with freedom to move within our territory provided you respect our customs and cause no harm." She gestured toward Nova, who had settled contentedly at Ryan's feet. "The blessing of the sacred guardians grants you this privilege. Do not squander it." With that pronouncement, the formal council session concluded, though smaller groups of Aurelians immediately formed their skin colors, shifting rapidly as they engaged in what appeared to be heated discussions. Neri guided Ryan away from the platform Nova, trotting alongside them. "That was intense," Ryan murmured once they had descended to a quieter level. "I didn't expect Nova to make an appearance." "Nor did anyone," Neri replied, a hint of amusement in her tone. "The young one has caused quite the disruption to centuries of tradition." "Is that a good thing?" Neri's expression turned thoughtful. "Change is neither good nor bad inherently. It simply is. How we respond to it determines its value." She glanced at him, sidelong. "Your presence has catalyzed changes long brewing among my people. Some, like Elder Thorin, fear what this means. Others, like Elder Shell, who spoke in your favor, see opportunity." "And you," Ryan asked, "what do you see?" Neri stopped walking, turning to face him fully. In the soft glow of the bioluminescent plants, her features seemed to soften the alienness of her appearance, fading before the very human emotion in her eyes. "I see possibility," she said simply, "and that is unfamiliar but not unwelcome." Before Ryan could respond, Nova chirped insistently, butting its head against his leg before bounding toward the edge of the platform. It looked back expectantly, clearly wanting them to follow. "I think we're being summoned," Ryan observed. Neri nodded her expression, turning serious once more. "The young one rarely ventures this deep into our territory. Something must be significant." They followed Nova through the heart trees, descending to ground level, and then into the dense underbrush beyond the settlement's immediate boundaries. Ryan activated his emergency beacon's locator function, ensuring he could find his way back if necessary, while Neri moved with the assured confidence of one who knew every root and branch of her home. The young ferocious led them deeper into the forest than Ryan had yet ventured, eventually bringing them to the edge of a clearing dominated by an ancient, massive tree, whose trunk was marked with peculiar spiral patterns. At the base of this tree lay the Mother of Shadows, her massive form unmistakable, even in the dim light. Neri immediately dropped to one knee, bowing her head in a gesture of profound respect. Ryan, following her lead, did the same, though he kept his eyes on the enormous predator. The Mother Ferocious regarded them with intelligent eyes, then made a rumbling sound that vibrated through the ground beneath them. To Ryan's astonishment, Nova approached its mother, and then returned to him, gently tugging at his uniform sleeve, with teeth that could have easily torn through the material, and his arm had the cub wished it. "She wants you to approach," Neri whispered, her voice tight, with what might have been awe or fear. "This is unprecedented." Ryan rose, slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. As he approached the Mother of Shadows, he noted signs of injury from the energy net patches of singed fur and angry welts along her flanks. Despite this, she projected an aura of undiminished power and dignity. When he stood before her close enough to feel her warm breath, the massive Ferocious lowered her head once more. This time, however, she nudged something on the ground between them, a small, crystalline object that caught the moonlight filtering through the canopy. "The Heartstone," Neri gasped from behind him. "She offers you the Heartstone." Ryan looked back questioningly. "It is the most sacred gift," Neri explained, her voice hushed. "A crystal that forms within the oldest Ferocious when they have lived beyond a century. It is said to contain their wisdom, their essence. They bestow it only upon those with whom they wish to form a lifelong bond." The significance of the gesture was not lost on Ryan. With profound respect, he knelt before the Mother of Shadows and carefully took the crystal into his hands. It was warm to the touch, seeming to pulse with its own inner light. "I am honored beyond words," he said softly to the great predator. "I will protect this trust with my life." The Mother of Shadows made that same rumbling sound, then gently pressed her forehead against his, once more before withdrawing. Nova chirped excitedly, circling them both, before settling at Ryan's side. When Ryan turned back to Neri, he found her staring at him with an expression he couldn't interpret, something between reverence and a more complex emotion he dared not name. "No outsider has ever received the Heartstone," she said quietly. "No Aurelian in living memory has been so honored. You are—" She struggled for words. "You are bound to Aurelis now, Ryan Blackwood. Not as guest or ally, but as one who belongs." The crystal in his hand seemed to warm further at her words, its subtle glow intensifying momentarily. Ryan looked down at it, then at Nova, pressed against his leg, and finally at Neri, whose golden eyes reflected the same light that emanated from the Heartstone. In that moment, despite being light years from Earth, surrounded by alien life forms in an unfamiliar forest, Ryan felt something he had not expected to find on this distant world connection. Not just to the ferocious who had inexplicably accepted him, but to Neri, whose initial suspicion had transformed into something far more complex. "I'm beginning to understand that," he replied softly. The days that followed brought significant changes to Ryan's situation. The gifting of the Heartstone transformed his status among the Aurelians overnight, from suspicious outsider to someone who commanded, if not acceptance, then at least cautious respect. Neri became his official liaison, tasked with teaching him their customs and language, while learning more about the Federation and Earth in return. Their cultural exchange deepened as Neri guided Ryan through the complexities of Aurelian society. He learned of their intricate social structure, organized around seasons and ecological roles, rather than rigid hierarchies. He documented their remarkable biological adaptations, not just their chameleonic skin, but enhanced night vision, extraordinarily sensitive hearing, and a unique form of short-range bioelectric communication that supplemented their spoken language. In turn, Ryan shared Federation knowledge, careful to focus on cultural and scientific exchange, rather than technology that might disrupt their way of life. He was particularly mindful of the Prime Directive's spirit, if not its technical application to this already contacted species. 3 weeks after the council meeting, as Ryan sat with Neri on one of the higher platforms, documenting the complex pollination patterns of canopy flowers, his emergency beacon suddenly activated with an incoming signal. "Federation frequencies," he explained to Neri, whose expression had turned wary at the device's unexpected chirping. "Someone's responding to my distress call." He activated the communication function, speaking clearly into the device. "This is Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blackwood, Federation Survey Corps, responding to incoming signal. Identify yourself." After a moment of static, a crisp voice replied, "Lieutenant Commander, this is Captain Reyes of the FSS Hyperion. We've been tracking your emergency beacon for the past week, preparing shuttle deployment for extraction. Transmit coordinates for pickup." Ryan glanced at Neri, whose skin had paled significantly, a reaction he now recognized as alarm or distress. The arrival of a Federation vessel would dramatically accelerate the changes already in motion on Aurelis. More significantly, it presented him with a choice he hadn't fully prepared to make. "Captain," he responded carefully, "I'm currently within an Aurelian settlement under formal diplomatic protection. Request permission to coordinate proper first contact protocols before extraction." There was a pause before Captain Reyes responded, surprise evident in her tone. "Understood, Commander. We were unaware of your diplomatic status. We're also tracking several unauthorized vessels that have entered the Aurelis system in the past 48 hours. Possible hostile intent. Can you clarify situation?" Ryan's eyes met Neri's. "The poachers," he said quietly to her. "They've sent reinforcements." Her skin rippled with patterns he now recognized as determination. "Then we must prepare. The council must be informed immediately." Ryan nodded, then addressed the communication device again. Captain, the unauthorized vessels likely belong to interstellar poachers, targeting the indigenous apex predators of Aurelis, highly intelligent creatures protected under Federation biodiversity statutes. I've established preliminary diplomatic relations with the Aurelian people. Request immediate security intervention against poachers and formal diplomatic contact team. Acknowledged, Commander. We'll dispatch security teams to intercept unauthorized vessels. Diplomatic Corps representatives are on board, and will prepare for formal contact. Transmit your precise coordinates when ready for shuttle deployment. Affirmative, Captain. Blackwood out. He deactivated the communication function and turned to Neri. My people are coming and they're bringing enough firepower to deal with the poachers. But this changes everything for your people. The isolation you've maintained for generations, it ends today. Neri's expression was solemn, but resolute. Perhaps it ended the day your metal bird tore through our sky. Or perhaps it ended long before, when the first sky thieves discovered our world, and we chose to hide rather than confront. She touched his arm lightly, a gesture of familiarity that had developed between them. What matters now is that we face these changes on our terms, not theirs. The Council will need to prepare, Ryan agreed. And we should warn the Mother of Shadows. The poachers will likely target the ferocious first. Neri nodded. I will gather the hunters. You speak with the elders. She hesitated, then added more softly, Will you return to the stars when your people come? The question caught Ryan off guard, not because he hadn't considered it, but because he had thought of little else since receiving the Heartstone. His duty to the Federation demanded his return, yet the connections he had formed on Aurelis with Nova, with the forest itself, and most complexly with Neri, pulled at him with unexpected strength. I don't know, he admitted. I have responsibilities, oaths I've sworn, but I also have new bonds here that I don't fully understand yet. Neri's skin shifted through subtle patterns of blue, a color range he had come to associate with contemplation or deep emotion. The Heartstone chooses its bearer for life, according to our legends. No Aurelian has ever abandoned such a sacred trust. The implication was clear, though delicately expressed. Before Ryan could respond, alarm calls sounded from the lower levels of the settlement, the distinctive three-toned warning that indicated approaching danger. They're already here, Neri said, her expression hardening as she reached for her spear. The poachers must have tracked the mother's movements. Ryan activated his emergency beacon's distress function, sending an urgent update to the Hyperion before retrieving the energy weapon he'd salvaged from the previous poachers. We need to hold them off until Federation forces arrive. How many hunters can we mobilize? 20 experienced warriors, Neri replied, already moving toward the descent path. But the poachers have weapons that kill from beyond spearcast. Then we need strategy over direct confrontation, Ryan said, following close behind. And we need the ferocious as allies, not just protected assets. Neri's eyes widened slightly. You would have us fight alongside the Sacred Guardians as equals. As partners, Ryan corrected. If the legends you've shared with me are true, the First Mother chose to protect your ancestors. Perhaps it's time for that alliance to evolve. The chaos that greeted them at ground level confirmed their fears. A larger poaching vessel had landed at the forest's edge, and at least a dozen figures in environmental suits were advancing toward the heart trees, wielding energy nets and stun weapons. Already they had captured 2 juvenile ferocious, the creatures struggling within containment fields as they were dragged toward the ship. Elder Thorin and a group of warriors had established a defensive perimeter, but their spears and natural camouflage provided limited protection against the poachers' technology. 3 Aurelians lay wounded, their skin flickering erratically in response to energy weapon impacts. Ryan assessed the situation rapidly, military training taking over. They're focusing on capturing ferocious, not engaging your people directly. If we disable their containment technology, we might force them to retreat. Neri nodded grimly. The young ones they have captured, they are Nova's siblings. The mother will not be far behind, and her rage will know no bounds. As if summoned by her words, a thunderous roar shook the forest. The Mother of Shadows burst from the undergrowth, 6 powerful limbs propelling her massive form directly toward the poachers, holding her captured young. 2 more adult ferocious flanked her, slightly smaller, but no less formidable. The poachers, clearly prepared for this response, quickly formed a defensive formation. One raised a weapon significantly larger than the others, a military-grade neural disruptor, Ryan recognized with alarm. Such weapons were banned throughout Federation space for their devastating effect on neural tissue. A direct hit would kill even a creature as magnificent as the Mother of Shadows. Without hesitation, Ryan raised his salvaged energy weapon and fired at the poacher wielding the disruptor. The shot struck true, sending the human staggering backward as the deadly weapon fell from numbed hands. In the same moment, Neri launched her spear with incredible precision, striking the control node of one containment field and shorting its circuitry. One of the captured juveniles immediately broke free, scrambling toward its mother with desperate speed. The ferocious adults, seeing an opening, charged the poacher line with coordinated precision that belied their seemingly wild nature. "Now," Ryan shouted to the Aurelian warriors, "target the capture equipment, not the poachers themselves." The battle that followed was chaotic, but decisive. The Aurelians, moving with their natural stealth and knowledge of the terrain, harassed the poachers from multiple directions. Ryan provided covering fire, disabling weapons, rather than targeting the poachers directly. The ferocious, meanwhile, demonstrated hunting tactics that spoke to their profound intelligence, hurting their adversaries, cutting off escape routes, and protecting their liberated young. The tide turned when a brilliant light cut through the canopy, a Federation shuttle descending through the opening, its weapon systems online, and targeting the poacher's vessel. An amplified voice resonated across the battlefield. "This is Captain Reyes of the Federation starship Hyperion. You are in violation of protected world statutes and engaged in illegal poaching activities. Surrender immediately or face full Federation response." The poachers, recognizing their sudden disadvantage, began a disorganized retreat toward their vessel. Several threw down their weapons, hands raised in surrender, while others continued fighting with increased desperation. One, presumably their leader, seized the remaining captured juvenile ferocious and backed toward the ship, using the creature as a shield. "Stay back," he shouted. "I'll kill it if you come any closer." Ryan locked eyes with Neri, a silent plan forming between them. He stepped forward, weapon lowered but ready. "You're surrounded," he called to the poacher. "Federation forces have your ship targeted. There's no escape." As he spoke, drawing the poacher's attention, Neri utilized her chameleonic abilities to blend perfectly with the forest backdrop, circling behind their adversary. The Mother of Shadows, showing remarkable restraint and understanding, held her position despite the threat to her young. "The Federation won't fire on a ship with illegal biospecimens aboard," the poacher retorted. "Too afraid of collateral damage to your precious endangered species. Now back off, or I swear I'll—" He never finished the sentence. Neri materialized from the foliage behind him, striking with the precision of a lifetime hunter. Her blow wasn't lethal, but it disrupted his neural functions long enough for the juvenile to break free, and for Federation security personnel to subdue him. As the last poacher was secured, the Federation shuttle landed in the small clearing. Captain Reyes emerged, flanked by security officers and what appeared to be diplomatic staff. Her eyes widened appreciably at the sight of the ferocious gathered nearby, the massive Mother of Shadows in particular. "Lieutenant Commander Blackwood," she said formally, though her expression conveyed both relief and astonishment. "It appears you've been busy since your Mayday." Ryan smiled slightly. "Just following the spirit of first contact protocols, Captain. May I introduce Hunt Leader Neri of the Western Canopy clan, my official liaison to the Aurelian people." He gestured to where Elder Thoran and the other council members had gathered. "And the Council of Elders, governing body of this settlement." Captain Reyes, to her credit, adapted quickly to the unexpected diplomatic situation. She offered the traditional Federation greeting, right hand, open palm forward, and addressed the assembled Aurelians with appropriate formality. On behalf of the United Federation of Planets, I extend greetings and apologies. We were unaware of the full situation on Aurelis. These poachers will face Federation justice, and we commit to preventing such intrusions in the future. Elder Thorin stepped forward, his skin displaying the formal patterns Ryan had come to recognize as diplomatic mode. Your arrival is timely, Star Captain. Perhaps the outsider Blackwood spoke truth when he claimed your Federation respects the sovereignty of other worlds. That is our highest principle, Captain Reyes confirmed. Commander Blackwood appears to have established preliminary diplomatic relations under extraordinary circumstances. We are prepared to formalize those relations at your convenience. As the diplomatic personnel moved forward to begin discussions with the elders, Ryan found himself standing between worlds, Federation officers on one side, Aurelian leaders on the other, with the ferocious gathered nearby in watchful observation. Neri remained at his side, her presence a comfort in the rapidly evolving situation. This is just the beginning, he said quietly to her. Everything changes now. Not everything, she replied, her golden eyes meeting his. Some bonds remain constant regardless of circumstance. The negotiations that followed spanned days with Ryan serving as a bridge between Federation diplomats and Aurelian elders. The resulting agreement established Aurelis as a protected sovereign world under Federation supervision with strict limitations on outside contact and technology transfer. Special provisions ensured the protection of the ferocious, classifying them not merely as endangered species, but as sentient beings with inherent rights. Throughout the process, Ryan found himself increasingly torn between duties. His Federation superiors expected him to return for debriefing and reassignment. His connection to Aurelis through the Heartstone, through Nova, and the Mother of Shadows, and most significantly through Neri, pulled him toward remaining. The morning the Federation diplomatic team prepared to depart, Ryan stood at the edge of a high platform overlooking the heart trees. The crystal Heartstone pulsed warmly in his hand, seeming to beat in rhythm with the living forest below. You haven't decided, Neri's voice came from behind him. It wasn't a question. Ryan turned to face her. Over the weeks of their association, he had become adept at reading her skin patterns and expressions. The complex mixture of colors, now playing across her features, spoke of anxiety, hope, and something deeper that neither of them had yet named. My duty to the Federation can be fulfilled from here, she interrupted gently. Your Captain Reyes has offered you the position of permanent liaison. You would remain a Federation officer while living among us. Ryan smiled slightly. You've been discussing my future with my commanding officer. I have been discussing possibilities, Neri corrected, moving to stand beside him at the platform's edge. The Heartstone chose you, Ryan Blackwood. The Mother of Shadows blessed you. My people are beginning to accept you. She paused, her skin shifting to the deep blue he now recognized as her most vulnerable state. And I would have you stay. The simple declaration contained volumes of unspoken meaning. In the weeks they had worked together, their connection had deepened from reluctant alliance to friendship, to something neither had fully acknowledged, something that transcended the differences in their biology and culture. If I stay, Ryan said carefully, it wouldn't be just as a Federation liaison or protector of the ferocious. It would be for you, Neri, for us. Is that even possible? Instead of answering directly, Neri reached out her hand covering his, where it held the Heartstone. Among my people, when two souls recognize themselves in each other, they perform the binding ceremony beneath the heart trees. Their blood mingles, and they are joined until death separates them. Her eyes met his challenge, and vulnerability balanced perfectly. Federation officers have married outside their species before, have they not? Ryan felt a smile spread across his face, tension releasing from his shoulders. They have indeed, though I suspect a traditional Aurelian binding ceremony might raise a few eyebrows in the diplomatic corps. Then we shall have two ceremonies, Neri declared, her skin brightening with joy. one for each world. After all, you have taught us that connection, not isolation, is the path forward. Their decision formalized before both Federation representatives and the Aurelian Council of Elders marked a new chapter, not just for them personally, but for relations between their peoples. The binding ceremony performed beneath the heart trees, with the Mother of Shadows and Nova in attendance, combined elements of both cultures, Aurelian blood-mixing rituals, alongside Federation vows of partnership. Captain Reyes, who remained for the ceremony before the Hyperion's departure, presented them with official recognition of their union under Federation law. More significantly, she confirmed Ryan's appointment as permanent liaison to Aurelis, a position that would allow him to maintain his Federation citizenship and rank while living among the Aurelians. The Federation Diplomatic Corps is still trying to process the implications of your unique situation, Commander Reyes told him privately after the ceremony. A human officer married to an Aurelian leader, blessed by previously undocumented sentient apex predators, serving as our primary contact with a newly recognized sovereign world. You've created quite the precedent. Ryan laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen by accident, Captain. I crashed on this world expecting nothing more than survival until rescue. Instead, I found love, Reyes suggested with a knowing smile. It happens in the strangest places, Commander. The Federation was founded on the principle that diversity creates strength through unity. Your union with Neri embodies that principle more literally than most. As the Federation personnel made their final preparations for departure, Ryan and Neri stood together at the edge of the clearing, the heartstone hanging from a woven cord around Ryan's neck. Nova pressed against his leg in what had become a familiar gesture of affection, while overhead, the Mother of Shadows watched from a high branch. "What happens now?" Neri asked, her hand clasped in his. Ryan looked out at the forest that had become his home, then back to the woman who had become his partner across the stars. "Now, we build something new, not fully Aurelian, not fully Federation, but a bridge between worlds. And maybe when the time comes..." He placed his free hand gently against Neri's abdomen, where their child, an unprecedented union of human and Aurelian DNA, made possible through Federation medical science, adapted to respect Aurelian biological principles, had just begun to grow. Maybe our child will help both our peoples understand that the differences between us are less important than what we share. Neri's skin rippled with patterns of joy as she leaned into his embrace. The First Mother recognized kinship with the early Aurelians, despite their differences. Now, the Mother of Shadows has recognized the same in you. Perhaps it is not accident but destiny. Ryan wasn't certain about destiny, but as he stood with his new family, human Aurelian and ferocious alike, he knew with absolute certainty that his accidental crash landing had led him exactly where he was meant to be. Not just as a bridge between civilizations or protector of an endangered species, but as a man who had found purpose, connection, and love across the stars. Above them, the three moons of Aurelis began their nightly dance, casting silver light through the canopy of the heart trees, illuminating the path forward, for two worlds now inextricably linked through understanding, respect, and the most powerful force in any galaxy, love that transcends all boundaries.